Right, hello and welcome to day 5 of Sampey Builds a Micro Home, or whatever the fuck this is. So what we did today, first of all, we discovered a number of my friends stood on the floor that I created, and we found that it was rather too flexible. That was because underneath here where we've got our horizontal end, and then our 2 points as we go along, and another one at the end, so 4 horizontals, and obviously our lengthways bits. It creates pockets underneath the floor that are approximately 1.2 meters by 0.8 meters, which is too much space unsupported for the plight and not flex. So what we did was we put in 3 units of this small framing material I'm using right along the center line underneath, attached them pretty much the same way we did the ply frame the other day. I can't lift this up and show you because we started building on it, and that's good enough for support of the floor. So that's reduced our unsupported pocket size to about 600 by 800 millimeters. Next we went in and we put 4 points down on our site, just bits of wood, and we leveled them out along the length and across the side. It wasn't actually too hard to do, and then we laid 2 ceramic tiles on each of them, and that's what our floor is now sitting on. So one of the core things we're doing with our build here is we're not tied to the deck like you normally are with a build. The foundation isn't, and we've got under each corner there 3 pieces of material that are flat, that aren't secure to each other or to the ground. So if there's an earthquake, this shit's going to slide, and that's going to be very easy to reposition afterwards, and also reduce load on the structure and whatnot. And if there's liquefaction where water comes up through the ground due to earthquakes and stuff like that, one end will drop or whatever, and we can just re-level and go again. It's a really cool way to build. Plus it's totally freestanding, which helps with the council. However, speaking of the council, I've now been informed by friends of mine that the law's changed since last I checked it out, so I'm not worrying too much about recession planes and stuff like that, because what I'm doing here is functionally illegal. It is a dwelling technically, although it looks like a shed, so we'll get away with it. We're not annoying the neighbours, and we've hidden from view largely, so we shouldn't have a problem. But basically that's the way we're going to functionalise this thing. We call it a shed and then live at it, and then hope no one gives us any too much shit. Right, so onto our cross beams that we're putting in today. Now, I didn't have any help today, so what I did, we just look over there, you see the little teddies sticking out of the wood there, the middle ones, they're for the repositionable shelves. And what I discovered was that they were almost the perfect height to line up over the stuff there. You can see we've got a bit of a gap. So what I did was I put them in place, sit the piece of wood on top, tack it in place with 1 screw, mark out where we need to do our little recess here that we've made, go away and make the recess, which I'll show you how to do in a minute, and then assemble it pretty much. I'm sitting on the wee titty things, which I'll later remove and put down lower and at other points, so I've got the repositionable shelves still available there, and I'll also probably screw them in. One of the things that happened while we're mucking around today is one of these beams actually dropped down and hit one of the shelves and popped the screw out and split the shelf. Now fortunately I got some spare shelves, so it's not too big a deal, but what I've done is put additional screws into each of the shelves in the middle there, to sort of help with that weakness problem while we're building. Once we've got our stress skin on, the shelves will be a lot stronger, but for now obviously if you take a wee tap on them and stuff, they just split. That's a bit shit, so we fixed that up. What else was there? Oh, I wanted to have a bit of a rant about safety today. So I got horribly burnt on day 4 of construction, hence taking yesterday off. So we're now building under a shade sail, which does shade our work area pretty damn well, and I've been careful to move to areas where I'm under trees, or at least under the shade sail, for most of today's construction, so I shouldn't have gotten too badly extra burnt. Also, gloves. A lot of people give me a bit of shit for wearing work gloves, but as you can see there, they're torn to fuckery. That would have been my skin otherwise. So I'm an artist most of the time. I need my hands to work well, and if they're bleeding or pussy or gross or blistered, that's going to get all over my artwork and also make it hard to do my job. So gloves aren't a bad plan. So yeah, sun safety a bit there, because I don't like using sunscreen, so don't. But just working the shade is not that fucking hard. I should have figured that one out. And that's about the size of that. So I'm just going to pause the video, and then we're going to shoot over. And oh, that was the other thing. I wanted to talk about tools that I picked up. So we discovered on day 3 that we didn't like the tools. I've got a rip saw there that my mate found was a bit rusty. I haven't actually used that today. What I did was I bought a tenon saw, which I'll show you in a minute. And I also bought a packet of chisels. Some of them are down there. Which I'll show you in a minute for the thing on how we make these little recess our wood in there so it fits all nice and neatly there ish. Neatly ish. So yeah, for the purposes if you want to do this kind of thing, I highly recommend a tenon saw. It's great for all the framing cuts and the angle cuts I'm going to have to do later, and like little recessing bits. That's what it's actually for. But when you're cutting through lengths of sheet like the ply over there, which I will have to do in a couple of cases, it's got a little rim along the top edge which stops you cutting all the way through with the saw like you normally would on a 45-degree angle, and forces you to bring the saw back to about a sort of a 20-degree angle to the wood. And that actually means there's more of the saw buried in your cut, and thus it's harder to accidentally come off in a curve or anything like that, and it keeps you straighter while you're making your cut, which is pretty effective. So yeah, we've covered our foundations such as they are, where the build's at the moment, stay out of the sun, yada yada yada, new tools, and haven't done anything else new construction wise. Pretty much day 3 construction, where I showed you how to countersink and drill and screw stuff. That's pretty much it. I must say I really love this bit of kit here. So we've got this Black & Decker drill, and apparently these things, this brand whatever it is, or this model of Black & Decker, comes with these wee clip out bits here. So I'll pop that, press down there. I wonder if you can actually do this one-handed. Doubt it, but no, you can't. Anyway, you pop that, pull on there, and this pulls out, and then you just load this one back in. This is a hammer drill setup. A drill setup, and that's a hammer driver, which is very good with our high-powered bit thing here and stuff. Just blah, and do all your screwing and stuff. So it means I can drill and screw and just chop between the two really, really quickly without having to constantly change the chuck out, which is really, really cool. All right, now we're going to pause, and I'm going to show you some other stuff over in the shade behind me. Right, just wait for my bro to come over and give me a hand filming here for the next wee bit, so I'll just show you this stuff. So we've got our tenon saw. As I said, it's got a little ridge on the edge. So that means if I was cutting lengthways through this piece of wood, and I get to about, here, it's going to start contacting the top of the wood and stopping me go through. That means I've got to pull back to like this to cut, and as you can see, that means there's more of the blade in the wood, and it's thus keeping me nice and straight as I go along. Now, here is the recess thing. It's a bit messy there, but it'll do. That we make. So what you do is you cut a bunch, like once you've marked out the depths you need and stuff like that, cut a bunch of cuts about sort of apart. I think you can just sort of see the edges of some of them there, all the way along horizontally across the wood, and then you chisel out the chunks to get this rough as guts but reasonably effective little recess thing. I think it might be called a tenon joint or something like that. Anyway, as you can see, get that piece of wood and we check it. That sits about right. It's a little proud of the surface, but that'll do. Right, so back over here, guess I was rushing at the end of my day. This is the mangliest mangle it ever was mangled. But the reason it went that way is, as you can see here, some of these cuts I've accidentally gone down to a line that I measured the wrong way with the cut. It's supposed to be up here, and you can see just there where the right line is. That's the wrong line because we measured upside down with that piece of wood. I just put the piece of wood on the ground, this on the ground, put them together and just drew a line across to get the right thickness. So as I started to chisel through, my chisel bit way too deep, taking out huge fucking chunks here all over the place, and mangliest mangle it ever was mangled. Believe it or not, still fits the piece of wood reasonably nicely. And I've left the last wee chunk here as I sort of figured out what the problem was and got it a bit higher and just tatted it out. I've left the last wee chunk, so as you can see, got a saw cut right down to a cut line there, put our chisel in the front here and knock it out, which I'll do on video shortly when my bro turns up. So we'll just pause for now. God, that's embarrassing. I'm so glad it's being covered and screwed into something so no one will ever see it again. So yeah, let's not screw that up again. So yeah, just mind your cut depth when you're doing this, because otherwise that'll happen. Good God, the horror. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say about safety, hydration. That's my 2nd litre bottle of juice and other stuff I've been on today. So making sure we get the salt and the sugar and the water into our system back again. Because even in the shade it's bloody hot and you don't want to give yourself heat stroke. I did that the other week and it's highly unpleasant. Especially if you're working by yourself, like it fries your brain first, and you start making some real bad decisions about what you're doing, and oh God, I feel so cold, so I'm going to get in a hot shower, which makes it worse. And I got real lucky. My partner at the time was hanging around and noticed what was wrong with me, touched my skin and said, Jesus Christ, that's almost so hot I can't touch it. I'm complaining about being cold and I got full body goosebumps everywhere. But what was actually going on was I had heat stroke, so she just grabbed a bunch of water and ice and just started cooling me down despite my screams of please God no. Yeah, that kind of got me back to the point where I realized, oh okay, like I'm feeling cold and I'm feeling funny and stuff like that, but I gotta let her keep cooling me down because my temperature had just gone through the freaking roof. I'd gotten to the point where my legs and arms were shaking uncontrollably, and yeah, and you know, I knew it was hot, but I was just freezing. So it's basically the inverse effect of hypothermia, where you think you're too warm and take all your clothes off in the snow. This one, you're too hot and you think you're too cold, so you start trying to heat yourself up more, which is a bad idea and will kill you. So yeah, safety team, it's sort of something to look at. So far we've managed to give ourselves, this week, well, the last 7 days or so, I've managed to give myself heat stroke and really bad sunburn just by making some bad decisions. So don't do what I did. And remember not to do your cuts too deep. Good God, that is awful. And while we're still waiting for my bro, here's those metal teddy things I was talking about before. As you can see underneath, just supporting the doof there. They don't need to be there anymore. I'll pull them out with pliers soon. But the other really cool thing with these is this is kit set furniture that's been assembled by a machine. So those little tits and the holes they sit in are all perfectly level to the level of the shelving unit, which is now bolted to the floor. So that meant that I didn't have to dick around with the, you know, 4 hands I don't have, and try and hold the thing in place while getting it level and then pin it in place and yada 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 yada. We didn't have to do that. All I did was basically stood in the middle, hang on to the spar, pop it into place, lean it against the little doofus there, and get it all set up. Make sure it was all sitting nicely. I did check level once it was popped into place, because it'll just kind of hold itself there. And yeah, that means that side to side and across the length, nice and level to the floor at least. So as long as we keep the floor level, everything else is level, and my mezzanine will be level, because sleeping on a slope is dumb and not very comfortable. So yeah, that was the other thing with those that I thought was interesting. Anyway, I'll just carry on waiting for my bro. Right, hopefully I've got this lined up well enough. I think my bro's having a hard shit at the end of the day. He's taking a wee bit of time, so just gonna go ahead and try propping this up, see if that works. I think we're, yeah, about shot at what we're looking at. So you saw this from above before. Here's a chisel and a super high-tech chiseling mallet, which is just a chunk of wood. I would have gotten a proper mallet or something, or a hammer, but I'm not going to be doing a lot of this, and I did want to keep the tooling nice and simple. So far, tooling wise, we've used a cordless drill, but you can use a manual drill in a driver or something like that, you know, like an ordinary screwdriver. But I definitely recommend just get a cordless driver. It will save you so much time, and they are quite cheap, and they're battery operated. So mine's got 2 spare batteries. I just had to change out a battery today. I've done several hours worth of drilling just on the one battery, and screwdriver-ness and whatnot. So yeah, good bit of kit. 1 chisel and a tenon saw, and I've used other materials so far, but that's what I'm saying is the kit for building this stuff now. It's the best way to go. We learn as we go. So got our cut to the right depth here, not like down here where we bodged it horribly. Pop a chisel in, check that it's at the right freaking depth, and then tappy tap, tappy tap, tappy tap, tappy tap. And then, come on, get out of there, you mongrel. Tap it some more, and as you can see, chunks are just, oh, ever so neatly popping away. Get out of there, you bastard. Right. Then, once we've, how about we just shift back a bit on this thing here. There we go. Once we've sort of chewed out the bolts there a bit, so try to keep all fingers and toes inside the vehicle to avoid stabbing ourselves with the chisel, not the plan. Get our bit of wood, pop it on there, check it sort of fits reasonably well, which despite our bodging it does. It's sitting a little proud of the surface, so I'm going to go back through and just smooth some of this out using the same technique, and then check for it again. But that's basically how you do it. Just don't make it look that shitty. Jesus, horrible job there. I'll grab the phone and go back up this end, where as you can see, still a little messy, but a hell of a lot neater. And that one's one of the done ones. So we're going to sort of get it to something like that at this end where we fucked it horribly. And then we'll get that assembled and I'll knock off for the day, because it's too hot, and finding places that are shady to work in, as you can see, is quite difficult. There's still sun coming through everywhere. The other thing I was going to say about today actually was videoing. I'm going to keep doing it from now on out, just at the end of the day like this, because honestly, like, I have to bump the phone, accidentally turn it off, or it run out of batteries while it's sitting there on pause waiting for me to shoot the next segment, to try and keep all these videos in one shot. And I shot 3 videos today where that crapped out. I already shot the thing, man, so it's all G. So yeah, what I'm going to do is shoot a video at the end of each day and just sort of try and show you some of the techniques and stuff like I just did. But pretty much today and yesterday we've shown you all the stuff you need to see in terms of how this is done. So we're just going to do progress shots at the end of the day and a rough explanation of what we did, because it's just, this filming shit is getting in my way. It really slows things down a whole bunch. Like, shit literally takes twice as long because you stop every 5 seconds to shoot some shit and then fucking adjust the camera and go meh. Trying to build some shit here, fuck's sake. But anyway, yeah, hopefully that'll work out, because honestly the way I have been shooting is just not working very well. Now I've got to tear my gloves off so I can turn off the video, which is exactly my point. You know, it's just a bit of a fiddle, but that's all right. You know, I like to be able to show you guys what we're up to and whatnot. So until day 6, I think it'll be, that's me signing off. I hope we learnt some useful stuff today about what not to do in the sun and how not to cut the little recessed joint there and how to cut it or whatever. You guys have a good one.